Sa ninth lesson natin sa Earth Science, in this video, we will focus in soil and human activities that will lead to soil erosion. Let us first define what is soil. Soil is defined as a material composed of 5 ingredients. You have minerals, organic matter, living organisms, gas, and water. Sa ibang resources naman, tinedefine ng soil bilang a rock-derived material that contains a mixture of organic matter and capable of supporting life. This is the same reason kung bakit importante at pinag-aaralan natin ang soil. It is because its capability of supporting vegetation. And I want you to take note na itong 5 ingredients na to, mineral or minerals, organic matter, living organisms, gas, and water, are the things that identify the property of a soil. Kung ano ang magiging physical or chemical property ng soil na meron tayo. The properties of soil determine whether it is capable to support vegetation. Humans use this property to identify if the soil is good for farming or kaya naman gamitin yung soil sa ibang other functions. So the first property of soil is texture. This refers to the size of particles that make up the soil and depends on the proportion of sand, silt, and clay-sized particles and organic matter in the soil. Now, I want you to take note that most of the soil that we have is made up of these 3 sediments: sand, silt, and clay. At ang pinakamalaki dyan is yung sand. This is the biggest sediment. Now, since siya yung pinakamalaki, siya rin yung mababa yung water holding capacity. Mas mabilis nagda-drain yung water sa sand kumpara dun sa dalawa, the silt and clay. We want to have the right proportion of sand, silt, and clay kung gagamitin natin ang soil for farming. At ang tawag dito ay loam soil. Now, take note on this triangle. Ang tawag dito sa triangle na to is your soil texture triangle. Sa soil texture triangle, sinasabi lang dito kung ano yung composition ng bawat uri ng soil base sa proportion ng clay, silt, and sand. So for example, you have loam at nandito ka sa punto na iyon or point here sa loam. So for you to identify kung ano yung proportion ng clay, silt, and sand, you'll just need to take note of this line. So may tatlong lines dyan. Yung horizontal, yung diagonal inclined to the left, and diagonal inclined to the right. So yung horizontal represents the proportion of clay. So we can say here, that dito sa point na to, 20% is clay. Dito naman, yung inclined to the right represents the proportion of silt. So in here, at this point, we can say that 40% is silt. And yung diagonal inclined to the left represent naman the sand. So in here, susundan mo lang yan. So 40% is sand. So that is how you use the soil texture triangle. Soil structure. So soil structure is described as the way the particles are clamped together. The composition of the soil determines its structure. So these are the examples of soil structure. So you have the granular, aggregated, blocky, columnar, platy, and massive. So nakadepende sa structure yung permeability ng ating soil. So kung gusto natin pagtaniman ng vegetation ang soil natin, we want it to at least to be in this range, moderate to high permeability. So para masigurado natin na magfo-flow pa rin yung water sa soil na to. And etong dalawa, yung platy and massive, or of course, we do not want that in agriculture. Pero siguro sa ibang plant, sa ibang klase ng vegetation, that can be used. Next property is porosity. So this refers to the pores within the soil, and these pores is capable of holding water and air. So ayaw natin na nagfo-flow lang basta-basta yung tubig sa soil. Hindi natin pwedeng sabihin na permeable lang dapat ang soil. Dapat porous din yung soil, dapat capable din ito mag-hold ng water, and aside from water, kailangan din nakakapag-hold ito ng air. Is soil chemistry. So this refers to the chemical composition and chemical properties of the soil. So the right chemicals should be present in the soil for it to support vegetation. So the common elements needed by plants are phosphorus, potassium, and nitrogen. So yung natural process ng decomposition of materials and the presence of humus provides these nutrients. Another thing na gusto nating malaman about soil chemistry is yung pH. So, kino-consider ng mga farmers yung soil pH para sa plants na papalakihin nila dito. Kasi may mga plants na gusto acidic yung soil, may mga plants naman na ang gusto ay basic or alkaline yung environment niya. Is soil color. So your soil color ranges from black to red to white. So mostly of this color comes from organic matter, the presence of organic matter and iron. Now, it is usual na yung topsoil mo, in this case, in this illustration, ay dark dahil yan sa presence ng decaying organic matter. If uniform naman ang kulay ng soil mo, just like this, in this picture, masasabi natin na maganda yung drainage ng water. Ibig sabihin, nagfo-flow freely yung water, kaya ganito ang itsura niya. So, uniform yung minerals na nagfo-flow din dito kasama ng water. Next naman, kapag may patches ng blue or white, like in this picture, maaaring masabi natin na poor yung drainage ng water. Naiipon sa isang place yung minerals, hindi nagfo-flow na maayos yung water. Now, after talking about soil properties, let's talk about soil erosion. So, soil erosion is a natural process. It is described as the removal of most fertile topmost layer of the soil. So human activities, although it is a natural process, human activities can speed up the process of soil erosion. So these are the properties that help, or the activities that help speed up soil erosion. So let's start with the first uh, human activity. First human activity is your agricultural depletion. So sa agricultural depletion, it involves all things na included sa farming mo. So farming can degrade the topsoil and lead to an increase in erosion. Bakit? Kasi kailangan mong itil, iloosen, and i-break yung clumps ng soil. Habang tinitil mo, nilulusen, and binibreak mo yung clumps ng soil, of course, meron dyang mas madali itong ma-erode ngayon. And after harvest, may mga farms na hinahayaan lang na exposed sa wind and water and other elements yung mismong farm, yung mismong fields. So of course, may speed up natin yung erosion kung walang vegetation dito. So what are the things that we can do for us to prevent soil erosion or to lessen the impact of agricultural depletion sa soil erosion natin? So we can leaf litter. So instead na after harvest tatanggalin natin yung iba't ibang plant debris sa field natin, pwede nating hayaan lang yung plant debris. Sa gardening, ang tawag dyan is mulching. So kapag sinabing mulching, yung mga plant debris nga na sinabi ko, leaves, dry leaves, roots, branches, hahayaan mo lang nakakover dun sa garden mo. So it will help increase, aside from decreasing soil erosion, it will increase the moisture of your soil. It will increase the decaying matters. Gusto natin yan para maging nutritious pa rin yung soil natin. And at the same time, malilesen niya yung presence. Malilesen, yung arrow ko pala, dapat pababa. It will lessen the presence of weeds or yung ibang unwanted plants. Next, you can also grow cover crops. Itong cover crops ay tinatanim mo after mo ma-harvest ang cash crops. So for example, normally meron kang field na tinataniman mo ng corn. Ang corn ang tatawagin nating cash crop. So that cash crop, your corn, will give you nice profit mula dun sa farming mo. Ngayon, kung hindi season ng corn, instead na hayaan mo lang exposed yung soil mo or yung field mo sa other elements, magtatanim ka ng cover crop. Cover crop, maaring ito ay mga root crops or other crops aside from corn. So by this way, hindi mo lang hayaang expose yung field mo nang sa ganun, malesen mo yung soil erosion. Next, you can also plant tall trees to buffer effects of wind. You can lessen the use of tractors. Instead of using sprinklers, you can just use drip irrigation. Nang sa ganon, direkta sa lupa, less impact yung ibibigay ng irrigation mo dun sa soil, less soil ang madi-displace, less soil ang ma-erode. Next, keep fields as flat as possible to avoid soil eroding downhill. Next human activity is the grazing or overgrazing of animals. Ito yung pagpapastol mo ng animals. So, animals kasi, farm animals, katulad ng cows in this picture, they will tend to eat everything. Kasama na yung roots. Kapag nasobrahan yung pagkain ng animals, nasama na pati yung roots ng plants, wala ng vegetation that will help prevent soil erosion. So, what are the things that we can do for us to prevent this type of soil erosion? So we can move animals throughout the year. Instead, nandito lang sa place na to, magigraze yung animals. After some time, dun mo sila ilalagay sa mas malayo. Or, kung yung place naman ay talagang prone sa erosion, huwag mo na dun ilagay yung pagpapakain mo ng animals. So, katulad ng mga lugar na malapit sa streams or kaya sa hills, they are prone to erosion. So, hayaan mo nang lumaki yung vegetation doon. Hanap ka na lang ng ibang place for grazing of animals. Next naman is deforestation and mining. Of course, we do not want that. Ang sabi natin, plants are the natural barrier against soil erosion. Pero kapag may deforestation and mining, nawawala yung plant life natin. What we can do to help lessen the effects of deforestation and mining sa soil and soil erosion is that we can reduce the amount of land we log and mine, reduce the amount of road built for logging, avoid logging and mining on steep lands, and cut only small areas at one time and quickly replant it. We can summarize this by saying that we reduce human activity, reduce the land that we exploit and we destroy dahil sa deforestation at mining. Development and expansion. So this includes the development of urban and suburban areas, which leads to exacerbation of erosion, especially if the developers ignore the natural state of the land. So katulad na nangyayari ngayon sa Rizal, ang Rizal naturally ay bulubundukin. Pero ang ginagawa ng developers, they are um, cutting, deforesting it, tapos naglatayo sila ng bahay. Of course, kung puro semento na yan, mas prone yan sa erosion dahil wala na yung roots ng plants that will hold the soil to its position. So what are the things that we can do to prevent this? Um, of course, we can reduce the amount of land that we develop. If nag-develop naman tayo, keep as much green space in cities as possible. This will help hold the water kung meron mang ulan. Next, invest in new technologies. Example, yung parking lot, pwede nating gawing reservoir ng rainwater kung gagawin nating permeable ito. And avoid building on steep hills. And last one, landscape plants or landscape with plants that minimize erosion. Lastly, recreational activities. So this includes driving vehicles off-road or hiking. Kung saan kasi laging gamit yung trail, doon nawawalan ng vegetation. Of course, again, we do not want to lose vegetation sa soil natin kasi mas speed up nga natin ang erosion. So what are the things that we can do? We can avoid using off-road vehicles sa hilly lands and kung tayo naman ay mag-hike, stay on designated trails. Ayun. So this is the last lesson for the first quarter. See you next quarter.